Hey gang, I hope you had a great spring break. I know that a few of you contacted me last week asking about a week 8 update or discussion, and it was spring break. So I wanted to make sure you guys actually did get a break from the class. That said, now we've got to dig back 2 weeks to wrap up that discussion. So here we go. I wanted to point out the table on the right of the screen here that kind of summarizes what you discovered, and that is, for the most part, not in every case, but for the most part, packages that used slab fonts, whether they were serif or sans serif, and had bright coloring were typically geared towards children or kids. Packaging that included script fonts and more subdued coloring were typically geared towards the adults. One of the conversations that emerged was that of distinguishing fonts, and that kind of goes with number 3 on the screen in resources. For most people, nobody really cares. They look pretty. You don't know the difference between serif or sans serif, slab or thin. Pick one of the designators. And that's okay. For many of you, you may not even need to go that far into this particular sub area of design. Personally, I have a long-standing love of font types, font faces. It's been probably a 20-plus year game to look at billboards and be able to identify particular fonts. One of my favorite memories in college, actually, was working with a particular business in the local mall. They were a small business that sold t-shirts for our college campus, but they also made custom vinyl stickers for your cars. And I went in to request a particular sticker, and when they handed me the sheet of fonts, they didn't have the names of the fonts. It was just samples. And I started writing in pencil next to them the different font names, and it surprised the woman working behind the counter because she didn't know the font names. But that tells you how long I've loved playing with fonts and font design. I have a post in the discussion. It's kind of buried down there, but it talks about some different resources. And these include using services like Adobe's Typekit that comes with a Creative Cloud subscription. You can actually add fonts to your computer via that web interface if you want to look at some different designs. You might also dig around and find websites like Font Squirrel and DaFont that offer free fonts. If you've looked at some of the fonts used by Google Sites and Google Slides, you'll notice that a lot of those fonts are also available through Font Squirrel to download and have on your computer for use. So What the Font is one of my favorite tools. They have a website and a mobile app. I've used the mobile app when I had an iPhone, but now that I'm on Android, I don't think I've seen their app in the Google Play Store, but I use their website from time to time. What you can do is snap a picture, or if you're on a computer using the desktop version, you can take a screen capture and upload that picture, that image of a font, and it will do a quick analyzing overview, and then it will tell you what font face it thinks you've just uploaded. It will also give you recommendations to related font faces, and it will give you links to download those fonts if you're so looking to do that. I've used this in the past with, oh goodness, A Brother Were Out There, the movie from the Coen brothers. We were trying to host an event, or not trying, we were hosting an event when I was in graduate school, and we wanted the flyer promoting the event to match the movie title. So we uploaded a picture of the movie title, and What the Font gave us a result of the closest font that was pretty darn similar. And we downloaded it, installed it, and used that to create our flyer, just in PowerPoint. If you were to look at my computer, you would see a ton of fonts installed. I kind of love them. But I also use What the Font to help me think about design. If I'm trying to match or get close, it comes in handy. The other resource that I listed for you is an interesting website where you can download a little one-pager PDF. It's their template. You fill it in, you trace the letters as if you're actually writing in your handwriting. You scan that image or that PDF, that document back in, and upload it to their website. They scan your handwriting and turn your handwriting into a font that you can then download and install on your computer. I mentioned this in that discussion post, but for those of you who have me on your committee or whose committees I serve as advisor, primary advisor, or chair, you may have noticed that I'm very quick with particular forms or other documents, and that's because I have my signature scanned as an image file, transparent image, so I can insert it into documents with ease, but I also have my handwriting on my computer, so I can type on these forms and it looks just like my handwriting. It's kind of a fun little tool to use. I've used it in presentations before, but it's not without limitations. So those are the resources I wanted to mention. But in terms of putting this all together and other applications for what we're doing, we're hitting a turning point. We've really focused on commercialization of design and commercial design. But what does that mean when we talk about learning materials? Well, on screen, you can see an image. This is actually the instruction sheet that came from my new office chair that arrived over spring break, but I assembled it this morning. That instruction sheet isn't unlike all of the other instruction sheets you find when you're assembling a product, whether it's a bookshelf or a chair or something else. What I want to point out is how they've put together this particular instructional guide. I noticed that there are two different fonts used. There's a sans serif font at the top for assembly instruction, and then it looks to be sans serif when you can take a closer look on the left side, and they have all the images of the parts. The numbering, so there's one back. There are the adjustable armrest. There are two of those, and that's part number 4. Those lettering, or that lettering, is in sans serif font. When you look down in the bottom left corner, it's probably difficult to see because the picture cuts it off, but there's a little bit of serif font that actually explains each of the levers. Now, if you go to the right side of the page where they actually have the instructions, the numbers and any lettering, or like the wording for assemble the arm is shown below, is in a serif font. But when you get to the bottom right corner, where it gives you the final instructions, it's a sans serif font to give you the final step. I thought it was interesting that they mixed between the two, and it's most easy to determine differences between serif and sans serif, as opposed to having two different sans serif fonts and determining if they're the same or not. So think about this. When we design materials to teach, does it matter? Does it help? This is a one-pager. You can probably get through it, and the design doesn't prevent me from understanding the content. But what if it did? Think about the handouts you've been given in classes your entire life, both as a young learner in K-12 and as an adult learner in higher education. Think about the materials that you're given, the handouts, and think about how they're put together. That's what we're transitioning into. So let's take a look at this week. Use the on-screen navigation to access another section of this week's overview.